The stars above Earth had changed, not in the way astronomers expected. No new supernova, no shifting constellations, no gradual cosmic evolution. The change was abrupt, impossible. At 2:18 a.m. EST on November 7, 2096, every observatory, every telescope, every orbital station reported the same anomaly. A missing patch of the universe. A region of space, roughly 10 light-years wide, had gone dark. The stars that had once burned there had been edited out of existence. No collapse, no energy signature, just gone. NASA, the European Space Agency, the China National Space Administration, every major scientific body scrambled for answers. Theories flooded the global networks. A rogue black hole, a glitch in observational technology, a cosmic-scale weapon. But one thing was certain: something, or someone, had the power to rewrite the fabric of reality. And Dr. Micah Wren, a disgraced ex-physicist turned underground researcher, knew exactly where to start looking. Micah sat hunched over his workstation in a dim-lit apartment in New Seattle, scrolling through intercepted transmissions. He hadn't slept in 36 hours, his mind burning with a single word that had surfaced in a classified government report. Eventide. It wasn't just an anomaly, it was a message. Buried in the missing patch of space, hidden in the microwave background radiation, was a pattern, a sequence of signals that actually shouldn't exist. It wasn't natural. It wasn't random noise. It was structured. Someone, or something, had left a trail. The problem? Micah had seen this signal before, 20 years ago. Back when he worked at Argosy Labs, a DARPA-funded research facility studying exotic physics. Before the scandal. Before he was blacklisted. Before his greatest discovery was erased from history. He inhaled sharply, tapping a sequence of commands on his old quantum interface. The system decrypted another line of data, and there it was again. Eventide. The same phrase that had haunted his nightmares for years. Someone else knew. Someone else was looking. A knock at the door. Micah froze. No one visited him, not here. His heart pounded as he reached for the compact pulse pistol under his desk. "Who is it?" he called. Silence. Then a voice. Not human. "We need to talk, Dr. Wren." Micah's grip tightened on the pistol. "You're 20 years late," he said. The woman standing outside his door wasn't human. At first glance, she could have passed for one. Tall, lean, draped in a long coat that concealed her form. But her eyes, they weren't right. A shimmering prismatic glow shifted within her irises, like light refracted through an alien ocean. She didn't blink. "You know what eventide is," she said. Micah exhaled. "I know what it was. The government buried it. They buried us." The woman tilted her head, expression unreadable. "Then you also know it's not over." Micah's mind raced. "You're not with the government." "No." A pause. "I'm with the ones who sent the signal." Micah's throat went dry. She wasn't human. She wasn't from Earth. And if she was telling the truth, whoever she worked for had just rewritten a section of the universe. The room pulsed with tension. Micah lowered his pistol, but his muscles remained rigid. "If you're with them, why come to me?" The woman stepped forward. "Because you built it." A sharp silence. Micah felt a weight press down on his chest. "That's not possible." "It is. 20 years ago, Argosy Labs, you developed the first prototype of the Chrono Architect, a device capable of rewriting quantum probability, an experimental form of time manipulation." Micah clenched his fists. "It didn't work. We barely understood what we were doing." "That's what they told you." His breath hitched. "You didn't fail, Dr. Wren. You succeeded, and someone has used it." The implications hit him like a shockwave. 20 years ago, his project had been shut down. The technology was classified, buried. He had been discredited, forced into obscurity. But now, someone, or something, had just used his stolen work to erase an entire region of space. Micah's voice was barely a whisper. "Who?" The woman's irises flickered. "The ones who come next." Micah stared at the digital map on his console, tracking the void in the cosmos where entire star systems had once existed. His gut churned. "If we don't stop them," the woman said, her voice colder now, "the next edit won't be a sector of space." Micah swallowed. "It'll be Earth." She nodded, and that's when the walls of his apartment collapsed inward. Time itself, fractured, a kaleidoscope of shifting possibilities, imploded around them. Micah barely had time to scream. The universe ripped apart around them. Micah felt his stomach lurch, his brain struggling to process the impossible. His apartment, the walls, the furniture, the dim glow of his monitors, all of it unraveled like threads of a torn tapestry. The city outside flickered between infinite variations, shifting in and out of existence. One moment, New Seattle stretched beyond his window, neon lights cutting through the midnight haze. The next, it was a barren wasteland. Then, an alien jungle. Then, nothing. Only darkness. Micah hit the ground hard, or at least, what felt like ground. His body tumbled through a space that wasn't space, where time didn't feel real anymore. His pulse pounded in his ears as he forced himself to focus. The alien woman was still there, standing effortlessly amid the chaos, unfazed by the collapsing reality around them. "Micah Wren," she said, her voice echoing through time itself. "You must listen." He gritted his teeth, trying to stand. "What the hell just happened?" "We've been intercepted," she said, "by those who control the edit." Micah blinked. "The ones who erased the stars?" She nodded. "And now they've tried to erase us." The void around them twisted, forming something new. A landscape. Materialized. Cold, metallic, unfamiliar. Micah's breath hitched as he recognized the architecture. Argosy Labs. Not the ruined remains he had left behind 2 decades ago. No, this was Argosy as it had been 20 years ago, before the shutdown, but that was impossible. "We're in the past," Micah muttered. The woman stepped forward. "Not exactly." The walls around them flickered like an unstable hologram. The lab was real, yet not real. A simulation? A reconstruction? A voice crackled through the air. "We see you." Micah's blood turned to ice. The woman's eyes narrowed. "They're here." Micah turned, his breath catching. Shadows flickered in the periphery. Figures. Stepping through the walls, their forms shifting, unstable, like broken reflections in a shattered mirror. They weren't human. Not fully. The first figure took a step forward, its body phasing between realities. It looked almost human, but its features were slightly wrong. Its eyes were too large. Its limbs moved with a fluidity that defied physics. It wore what might have been a uniform, dark, featureless, shifting. "Dr. Wren," the figure said, its voice layered as if multiple versions of itself were speaking at once. "You should not exist." Micah's throat went dry. The woman beside him tensed. "They are editions. Fragments of those who have been rewritten." Micah swallowed hard. "You mean people who've been erased?" "Not just people," she murmured. "Entire civilizations. Whole timelines. This is what remains of them." The edition stepped closer, its face flickering through a dozen expressions. "You were removed 20 years ago, yet you persist. Why?" Micah clenched his fists. "Because someone tried to erase my work, but they failed. I remember. I built the Chrono Architect, and now someone is using it to rewrite the universe." The edition cocked its head. "Then you must be corrected." And then, time collapsed again. Micah fell, but not through space. He fell through possibilities, through what-ifs. In one version, he never built the Chrono Architect. He died in a car crash at 25. In another, he finished. The machine and the government used it to reset history itself. In another, the Earth was gone, erased completely. Each possibility slammed into his mind like a sledgehammer, filling his consciousness with lives he had never lived. And then it stopped. Micah gasped, finding himself on the floor of a familiar place. His old lab, the Nerean one, not a simulation. The alien woman was still with him, kneeling beside him. "You're still here," she said, relief flickering in her strange eyes. "They failed to overwrite you." Micah took a shuddering breath. What the hell was that?" She helped him to his feet. "An attempted correction. The additions tried to remove you by forcing you into rewritten timelines. But you resisted." Micah rubbed his temples. "How?" The woman hesitated. "Because you are an anomaly." He blinked. "Excuse me," she exhaled. "Your invention, the chrono-architect, should not have worked. It was an accident, a glitch in the underlying code of reality. And you were supposed to be erased with it." Micah's stomach turned. "But I wasn't." "No." Her gaze darkened. "And now you're the only one who can stop them." Micah forced himself to breathe, his mind still reeling. "Okay, let's say I believe you. Let's say someone is using my stolen tech to edit reality. What's their endgame?" She hesitated. "They are rewriting history to eliminate opposition. To construct a version of the universe where they are the only intelligence that has ever existed." Micah stared. "They're erasing entire civilizations, just to make themselves the only ones left?" She nodded. "And Earth is next." Micah clenched his fists. "Then we stop them." She studied him for a moment. Then, for the first time, she smiled. "You're more stubborn than most humans I've met." He smirked. "Get used to it." She extended a hand. "Then let's rewrite fate before they do." Micah took her hand, and reality shifted again. The shift was different this time. Micah didn't feel the violent tearing of space-time or the crushing weight of collapsing possibilities. Instead, it was a smooth transition, like stepping between two rooms, except those rooms were entire realities. One moment, he was in the abandoned ruins of Argosy Labs. The next, he was somewhere else entirely. A massive structure stretched around him, cold, metallic, humming with power. The architecture was unlike anything human. Walls of shifting light pulsed in geometric patterns, their colors subtly rearranging like living circuitry. The floor beneath his feet was smooth but not solid. It rippled slightly, adjusting to their presence. Micah exhaled. "Okay, where the hell are we now?" The alien woman stood beside him, her iridescent eyes scanning the space. "We are inside the Eventide core." Micah frowned. "Eventide isn't just an anomaly, is it?" She turned to him. "No, it's a machine." His pulse spiked. "A machine that edits reality?" She nodded. Micah ran a hand through his hair. "And let me guess, whoever is using it is somewhere inside this. Whatever this is." The woman studied him. "They are not just inside it. They are it." Micah's stomach dropped. The realization hit him like a freight train. The ones erasing history, rewriting the fabric of time itself, weren't just some secretive alien species wielding advanced technology. They had become the technology. "They merged with the machine," Micah muttered. The woman nodded. "The beings who control Eventide. They were once like us, flesh and blood, but over countless iterations, they refined themselves. They removed weakness, erased doubt, sculpted a perfect existence." Micah felt a chill crawl up his spine. "And anyone who doesn't fit into that perfect version of reality. They are erased." He swallowed hard. "Jesus." The woman turned toward the shifting walls, pressing her palm against a glowing surface. The structure responded. Panels rearranged, symbols glowing in languages Micah couldn't comprehend. "They do not see us yet," she murmured, "but we are running out of time." Micah crossed his arms. "Okay, so what's the plan? We break their machine, crash the system? The woman hesitated. Micah's gut tightened. There is a plan, right? She met his gaze. There is, but you may not like it. Try me. She took a slow breath. Eventide is too vast, too advanced to simply destroy. It spans multiple realities, woven through time itself. But there is a way to rewrite the rewrite. Micah exhaled. You're saying we use their own machine against them? Yes. That's insane. Do you have a better idea? Micah opened his mouth, then shut it. He hated that she was right. Fine, he said. But what exactly are we rewriting? The woman's expression darkened. We must go back to the moment it all began. The moment the first edit sound was made. Micah frowned. You mean the first civilization they erased? She nodded. Micah's breath hitched. That far back? Yes. If we undo their first alteration, their entire existence will unravel. Micah exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Right. So we just have to travel to an erased-on point in time, sneak past godlike beings who control all of reality, and rewrite history without getting obliterated. Correct. He let out a dry laugh. Yeah, totally doable. The woman's expression softened slightly. You are not alone in this, Micah Wren, and despite what you believe, she placed a hand on his chest, just over his racing heart. You were meant to be here. He swallowed hard. Meant to be here. The thought gnawed at him. Was this just chance? Or had he always been core part of this? A tremor shook the structure. The pulsing walls dimmed. The woman's eyes widened. They know we're here. Micah clenched his fists. Then let's move. She pressed her hand against the shifting surface again, and the floor beneath them collapsed. Or rather, they fell through time. Micah hit the ground hard, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. He rolled onto his back, gasping, blinking against a blinding blue sky. Wait. Sky? He sat up. They weren't in Eventide anymore. They were outside, on solid ground. The landscape stretched before them, towering crystalline structures, silver rivers reflecting twin suns, massive rings suspended in the sky like floating cities. It was beautiful, ancient, and Micah knew, deep in his gut, this place no longer existed. This is it, the woman said quietly, standing beside him. The first civilization they erased. Micah got to his feet, taking it all in. And you think if we change what happened here, the entire timeline will shift, she said. Eventide will never exist. Micah exhaled. Right, no pressure. A shadow fell over them. Micah looked up, his heart stopping cold. A massive structure loomed in the sky, descending toward the planet. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even mechanical. It looked alive. And Micah understood. This was the moment history was first rewritten, the moment everything changed. He turned to the woman. Tell me we have a plan. She looked at him, and for the first time, she looked afraid. They're already here. The sky split open, reality fractured, and the war for time itself began. The sky shattered like glass. Micah had seen strange things in his life, but nothing like this. The Eventide forces didn't arrive in ships. They didn't descend like an invading army. They bulled it into existence. Ribbons of unmade reality twisted open above them, and from within came the additions. Not just fragmented beings like before, but towering figures of shifting probability. Their bodies weren't solid. They flickered between possibilities, their forms adjusting moment by moment as if the universe itself was unsure of what they were supposed to be. Micah felt something deep in his brain, a pressure, a whisper, like a presence, editing his very thoughts. They're trying to rewrite us. The alien woman beside him. Saris. He finally remembered her name, snapped her fingers. A pulse of blue energy rippled outward, severing the pressure in his mind. Stay focused, Micah, she shouted. They're destabilizing the timeline. Micah shook off the dizziness, glancing at the city around them. The towering crystalline structures trembled, their forms glitching in and out of existence. The civilization that had once stood here, the first victims of the edit, hadn't even realized they were being erased. Until now. The ground quaked. Figures emerged from the city. The people of this lost world. They weren't human, but their expressions were painfully recognizable. Fear, confusion, defiance. They pointed toward the sky. They saw the editions. And they fought back. A deep hum resonated through the air as weapons powered up. Massive arcane-looking cannons emerging from the city's spires, firing lances of pure time-distorting energy toward the invading forces. The editions were twisted to avoid the blasts, but some were struck, shuddering, freezing mid-glitch, then collapsing into non-existence. Micah's heart pounded. They can be killed. Saris nodded. They were never gods, just manipulators. A deafening boom tore through the sky as the colossal structure, the living machine Micah had seen, descended toward the surface. Its surface was smooth, liquid-like, reflecting the dying world beneath it. Micah's gut twisted. That's the core of Eventide, isn't it? Saris grimaced. It's not just the core, it's their birthplace, the source of all their edits. Micah exhaled sharply. Then we destroy it. Saris hesitated. It's not that simple. A blast of a temporal energy ripped through the city, rewinding an entire district into rubble. The editions' curse moved in synchrony, their shifting bodies distorting the very fabric of reality. And then Micah heard the voice. Not through sound, through time itself. You do not belong. Micah gasped as his own hands glitched. His fingers blurred, becoming multiple versions of themselves, as if his entire existence was being rewritten. Saris grabbed his wrist. They're trying to overwrite you again. Fight it! Micah clenched his jaw. How? Saris's eyes flashed. By proving you exist. Micah gritted his teeth, focusing every ounce of willpower on staying here, now. He wasn't just an accident in time. He mattered. His hands solidified. The whisper in his mind faded. And then, he knew what to do. We don't need to fight them, he said. We need to overwrite them. Saris's eyes widened. You mean, use their own machine, Micah said. Rewrite them out of history instead. For the first time, Saris looked truly uncertain. Micah, we're talking about erasing an entire species from existence. Micah turned toward the city, toward the people about to be erased. If we don't, he said, his voice heavy, they'll do it to us. Saris exhaled, then she nodded. Then let's change history. Micah and Saris moved fast, weaving through the crumbling city as the battle raged around them. The Eventide core loomed ahead, its liquid surface pulsing as it prepared for the final rewrite. Micah reached into his jacket, pulling out a small data core, the last remaining fragment of his original work on the Chrono Architect. If we can inject this into their system, he said, we can feed them a new timeline, one where they never existed. Saris hesitated. If we do this, we won't remember them either. No one will. Micah's stomach twisted, but he nodded. That's the point. A pulse of energy shot toward them, an edition, emerging from the void. It lashed out, distorting time around them. Micah dodged, but Saris wasn't fast enough. The blast caught her shoulder, her form glitching. As the edit took hold, Saris! Micah grabbed her, but her skin flickered like static. Her face twisted in pain. Finish this, she choked out. Micah refused to let go. You're not fading, he said, his voice shaking. I won't let them. A spark ignited in his mind. A realization. He could change the edit, right here, right now. Micah focused, harder than he ever had before, on one undeniable truth. Saris exists. The glitching slowed, then stopped. She gasped, solidifying. Micah grinned. Told you. Stubborn. Saris laughed breathlessly. That was reckless. That was necessary, Micah shot back. Now let's end this. Together, they reached the second, eventide core. The shifting surface pulsed violently, sensing their intent. The additions converged, whispering in fractured voices. You cannot erase what is eternal. Micah jammed the data cores into the machine. Watch me. The core screamed. Time fractured outward. And in the final moment before everything collapsed, Micah heard the last echoes of the additions. You have no idea what you've undone. Micah Wren woke up in his apartment. The sky outside was normal. The stars were where they should be. He exhaled shakily. The additions were gone. They had never existed, but something nagged at the back of his mind. A hollow space where a memory should be. A name he couldn't quite remember. And then, a knock at the door. Micah's breath caught. He stood, heart pounding, and opened it. A woman stood there, tall, lean, iridescent eyes. And she smiled. Hello, Micah, she said. The memories came crashing back. Saris. She had made it. Micah grinned. Took you long enough, she smirked. Time's complicated. Micah exhaled. So, what now? Saris's eyes gleamed. Now, we find out what else they were hiding. Micah felt a slow grin spread across his face. Let's rewrite history one more time. Micah Wren had rewritten history. The eruditions, the beings who once controlled time itself, were gone. Their reality-warping machine, Eventide, had been erased from existence. The stars that had vanished were back. The civilizations they had destroyed were never lost. The universe had been restored. But something was wrong. Micah could feel in it. An absence, a missing thread in the fabric of his mind. He sat in his dim apartment in New Seattle, staring at his old computer screen, trying to focus. The data made sense. The stars were in place. No anomalies, no missing time. And yet, his fingers hovered over the keyboard. His mind whispered a name he shouldn't remember. Saris. A woman who had never existed. A battle that had never happened. And then, a knock at the door. Micah's breath caught. When he opened it, she was standing there, tall. Iridescent eyes shimmering like refracted light. A smirk tugging at her lips. Hello, Micah. The memories crashed over him. All of it. The war. The time fractures. The impossible things they had seen together. She was real. She had survived the edit. Micah exhaled. How? Saris tilted her head, studying him. You tell me. You're the one who rewrote the timeline. He ran a hand through his hair. Yeah, but we erased Eventide. That means we erased you too. Saris crossed her arms, giving him a knowing look. Clearly you didn't. Micah hesitated. But how? She took a step closer, her voice quieter now. Because you refused to forget me. Micah's pulse quickened. You held on to me, Micah, Saris continued. You overpowered the edit. Somehow, in that final rewrite, you made sure I still existed. Micah swallowed. He hadn't just deleted the additions. He had rewritten the universe in a way that made sense to him. And in his version of reality, Saris belonged. You stubborn bastard, she teased. Micah chuckled, shaking his head. Guess I have a habit of breaking the rules, she smirked. Good, because we have a problem. His smile faded. What do you mean? Saris stepped inside, closing the door behind her. You did it, Micah. You erased Eventide. The additions never existed. Their timeline is gone. Micah exhaled, relieved. Yeah, I know. That's a good thing, right? Saris hesitated. Then she pulled something from her coat pocket, a small black data drive. Micah frowned. What's that? Saris tossed it to him. I found this the moment I woke up in this timeline. It shouldn't exist, but it does. Micah caught the drive, staring at it. What's on it? Saris folded her arms. Open it and see. Micah hesitated, then plugged the drive into his computer. A single files appeared. No name, no metadata, just a timestamp. 2096, 11:07, 2:18 a.m. Micah's blood ran cold. That's the exact time the stars vanished, he muttered. The moment we first detected eventide. He clicked the file. A video cause played. Micah's breath hitched. It wasn't just a recording. It was a message. From someone who shouldn't exist. From himself. Micah stared at the screen in shock as his own face appeared. Older, exhausted, eyes filled with something between fear and resignation. If you're seeing this, it means I succeeded. Micah's heart pounded. I erased them. I stopped the additions. But I was wrong. A chill ran down his spine. Eventide wasn't just a weapon. It wasn't just a machine for editing time. It was a prison. Micah's breath caught. He turned to Saris, but she was already pale, her jaw tightening. They weren't the real threat. The older Micah continued. They were the jailers. And now that I've erased them. The screen flickered. Micah leaned in. No, what were you going to say? Now that they're gone, the thing they were holding back is free. The video cut out. Silence. Micah sat there, his entire body numb. Sari spoke first. Her voice was quiet. What did we just do? Micah swallowed hard. They had fought to destroy Eventide. They had rewritten the universe to erase it from history. But they had never stopped to ask, why? It had been created in the first place. And now something worse was coming. Micah clenched his fists, forcing himself to think. All right, we figure this out. We stop whatever's coming. Saris gave him a wary look. Micah, we just erased a race of godlike time manipulators. And they doubtshare were afraid of this thing. Micah exhaled. Yeah, I noticed that. Saris sighed, then smirked. Good. Just making sure you know how screwed we are. Micah chuckled. Oh yeah, totally screwed. A beat of silence passed. Then Micah stood, a determined fire in his eyes. So, what do we do? Saris considered for a moment. Then she picked up the data drive and twirled it between her fingers. Same thing we always do, Ren. She met his gaze. Rewrite history. Micah grinned. Damn right. Outside the window, the bright stars flickered. Something ancient had awakened, and the war for time was about to begin again.